Welcome back again to the Fedrix lens. Long before the obelisk stood in Rome, long before it entered Vatican space, and long before a modern capital turned its shape into national memory, it rose in Egypt. Not as decoration, not as borrowed monumentality, and not as a dead object waiting for later civilizations to give it meaning. It began inside a living sacred world. To understand the obelisk, you have to go back to ancient Egypt, to a civilization where stone was never just stone, where temple space was tied to cosmic order, and where political authority and sacred meaning were woven tightly together. In that world, a monument could do more than fill space. It could hold an idea, mark a center, make order visible. That is the world that gave birth to the obelisk. Its shape is simple enough to recognize: tall, narrow, upright, rising from the earth toward the sky. But in Egypt, that shape was never neutral. It belonged to a sacred environment shaped by sunlight, ritual space, kingship, and the conviction that order had to be upheld in alignment with the gods. That is one reason ancient Egypt still feels so powerful to later ages. Its monuments do not look accidental. They look deliberate, as if architecture, religion, and authority were all speaking the same language. And the obelisk was one of the clearest expressions of that language. Its deepest associations point toward the solar world of Egypt, especially places like Heliopolis, one of the great centers of sun worship. There, the god Ra or Re stood near the center of Egyptian sacred imagination. Light, radiance, rising, continuity, these were not decorative themes. They were woven into how Egypt understood reality itself. Inside that kind of world, the obelisk did not simply stand tall. It rose with meaning. It belonged near temple space, inside sacred alignment, inside a civilization that did not draw a hard line between the visible world and the sacred order behind it. Height mattered, placement mattered, presence mattered. And that is the first thing later civilizations inherited without inventing for themselves. Because before the obelisk became a monument of empire, before it became a Christianized object in Rome, before it became a modern state symbol, it was already charged in Egypt. It already carried seriousness. It already carried weight beyond its mass. That matters because it is easy to look at ancient monuments as if they were only engineering problems or aesthetic choices. But Egypt did not build like that. Egyptian sacred architecture was bound to worldview. A monument was not meaningful after it was built. It was built because meaning was already there. The obelisk belongs to that logic. It rises like a fixed declaration. It narrows as it ascends, pulling the eye upward. It creates a visible line between ground and height, between place and elevation, between the human world below and the ordered world above. Even stripped of later interpretation, the form still carries compressed seriousness. In Egypt, that seriousness was part of the design. This is also why the obelisk should not be treated as just another piece of ancient stonework. Egypt had columns, statues, pylons, shrines, walls, courts, and temples. The obelisk is distinct because it concentrates so much into one upright form: sacred presence, visual clarity, monumentality, and civilizational intention. It is one of those rare forms that feels symbolic even before someone explains it. And in ancient Egypt, explanation surrounded it: temple world, solar association, royal setting, sacred landscape. All of these gave the obelisk its first home. That is where the story has to begin. Not in Rome, not in Washington, not in modern speculation. In Egypt. Because Egypt did not receive the obelisk from another power. Egypt gave it birth. And in that first setting, the obelisk was not yet a traveling monument. It was still rooted in the world that formed it, a world of temple order, solar meaning, and sacred permanence. That is the forgotten starting point. When later civilizations raised obelisks, moved them, reinterpreted them, or echoed their logic, They were not creating the form from nothing. They were inheriting something already charged with sacred life under the Egyptian sun. That is what Episode 1 recovers. The obelisk began as sacred Egyptian stone. It began in a civilization that knew how to fuse light, order, and monument into one visible form. It began in a world where architecture was not separate from theology, and where rising stone could carry more than memory, it could carry meaning. But Egypt did not stop at origin. Once the form existed, it could be raised more deliberately, placed more strategically, and tied more directly to royal presence and temple prestige. In other words, once Egypt gave the obelisk its sacred birth, it also began turning that form into something public, visible, and powerful. And that is where the next layer begins. Because the obelisk was not only born in Egypt. In Egypt, it also learned how to speak power. If this video made you see the world a little differently, go ahead and smash that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new upload. Let me know down below what should I cover next. I appreciate you all so much. Catch you in the next video. Look closer, see further, decide for yourself.